So up until this point, we've been reading and writing notes in relation to the treble clef. And in lecture 1, Richard showed us that although this stave has 5 lines and 4 spaces, actually we can temporarily extend this, if needs be, by use of ledger lines. Now what this does is it allows us to go a bit higher for a period of time, or a bit below the stave, a bit lower for a period of time, if we need to represent and show notes that are out with this main range.
But there's a couple of problems with that. If we go on for any duration using only ledger lines, that's really quite hard to read. A musician trying to read that music kind of loses their orientation if you stay a long way from those 5 lines and you're just floating above the stave on those ledgers or below the stave on those ledgers. You can see an example here. It gets a little disorienting to look at. And secondly, even using ledger lines, reasonable amounts of ledger lines above and below the stave, we're still not getting at all of the ranges of pitches that real instruments and real voices actually use when they're performing music. If you think about a bass guitar and you compare it to a flute, we've got really low sounds and we've got really high sounds. We need ways of covering both of those ranges of pitches. If you think about choirs and the 4 voice types that we might commonly have in a choir, we might have a bass voice, a tenor voice, an alto voice, a soprano voice. And kind of the point is that in those different voice ranges, we cover different ranges of pitches.
So you remember from week 1 that we described a clef as really just a way to identify notes and really to assign letter names to the series of 4 spaces and 5 lines. The treble clef is the one that we've used so far, and it's just a system, the treble clef we've used is just a symbol that we use to indicate which range of pitches we want these particular lines and spaces to represent. So there's actually a few different types of clefs, and all of which do exactly the same thing. They indicate the different selection of pitches that should be read from the lines and from the spaces on the stave. But we're going to focus on the next most commonly used clef, and that is the bass clef. And as the name suggests, this one is used to represent low-pitched notes.
Now, an interesting thing about this clef is that it quite often forms part of a system with the treble clef. Anyone who's ever looked at a piece of piano music will be really familiar with the look of this. Now you can see that we've got 2 staves, each of them's got the normal 5 lines, and they're connected by what we call a brace. That's the bracket here on the far left. So these 2 staves together give us a grand stave.
So we've got 5 lines on the top stave and we've got 5 lines on the bottom stave. Now what I want you to do is imagine an 11th line that runs right through the middle of these 2. It's right in between the 2 staves. We could say that this line gives us a meeting point between the 2 range of pitches and between the 2 clefs. So the middle line, if we think about it then, would appear as the first ledger line below the treble clef stave, if we go down. And if we're thinking about the bass clef stave, it's the first ledger line above this stave. Now, this line, whether you're thinking about it in the treble clef or in the bass clef, actually represents the same note. It's the note that it's the line that we would draw C on. And because it's right in between the 2 staves with the 2 clefs, we actually call this middle C. So we can say that this note middle C joins, or it connects the 2 staves, and that as such we can see that the treble and the bass staves aren't completely separate entities, but actually they're 2 constructs that serve to form a spectrum of pitches from low to high. The treble and the bass clef are the 2 most common clefs, but there are others, as we've mentioned, and the additional material for this section goes into this further.